This is the Exploring Astrology Podcast, and I'm your host, Adam Summer.
It's time for a news story. I suggest that the stories we need turned up right on time about 5,000 years ago. We need a news story. We didn't just dream our carefully individuated thoughts. We got dreamt.
I have returned, my friends. Welcome to another podcast. This one, finding a new story, perhaps around the right kind of trouble. The date is May 27th, 2018. The moon's in Scorpio, applying to a conjunction with Jupiter. Perfect. Separating a square with the man of the hour, because we're going to be talking about Mars and his upcoming retrograde this entire show. And speaking about this trouble, the retreat happened, and it was amazing. And on the way to it, there was, speaking of squares as well, Mars square Uranus was the aspect of the beginning of the retreat. And the voice at the beginning of the podcast, if you're not familiar, the man that's talking about the stories showing up right on time, well, that's Martin Shaw. And you've heard me talk about Martin Shaw probably many times in this podcast, because I love the man and get a lot from his delicious language and books. And that was my first experience with Uranus ingressing into Taurus. I was on the way to the retreat, got a push notification on my phone about this rare experience in Crete with Martin, where 15 of us would get to go and spend the week with him and listen to stories and also tell our own stories as well. And I pulled to the side of the highway. I signed up immediately. I guess I was one of the first people to sign up. And so I'm going to Greece in October, and it begins the day Venus stations retrograde. And so that'll be a whole nother story down the road, but I'm very excited about it because it was kind of a premonition of what was to come at the retreat, the lessons that I would learn, and all of this. And so it was an incredible experience. These retreats are definitely incubators where things come up, amazing friendships are forged. I mean, it's really where a lot of work gets done. A lot can be done in a reading, a lot can be done in the courses and the classes that I offer, but these retreats are truly amazing. And so the next stop is Maui, and that's going to happen in January of 2019. And so sign up is already live. There's already a few people that have signed up for it, which is amazing because it's going to be great. It's for the lunar eclipse that's around that time. And I just can't wait. I've never been to Maui. I used to live in the Big Island, but I've never been to Maui. So I'm really excited about all of this, and also this show, to share so much of what I've been marinating on with Mars as he's moving towards this opposition with Venus, as he's moving towards his station and going retrograde this summer, this rare event in Aquarius. And well, this podcast is all about it. And first, I've got some good news and I've got some bad news. Which would you like first? Okay, the bad? All right, the bad. The bad news is you're falling through the air. Nothing to hang on to. No parachute. That's the bad news. The good news is there is no ground. Some timeless wisdom from Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. And so while we're falling, what is the right kind of trouble to get into? Well, a few days ago, while falling happily through eternity, I wrote of this idea of the ephemeral aeon, which is a tip of the hat to my good brother, Luke Redfield, who has an album called The Ephemeral Eon. And I wrote this ephemeral aeon piece to kind of play with the idea of eternity, but also avatars, and maybe Mars is well, one of them, especially this summer. And so my thinking was like this. Aeon is a child at play, Heraclitus reminds us. When we were kids, time flirted with eternity. A summer felt like a lifetime in our constant explorations. And as I'm sure you have noticed, it slowly fades away. Time speeds up. It flies, it disappears, and it is the most popular wish people have, longing for more of it. Problem is, all we have is time. It's all there is. And aeon is a word used for this idea in Hellenistic times and weaves itself perennially through Gnostic thought, showing itself as well in Jung's thinking and phenomenology of self. We are secreted from it and then neatly composted back into it. There is no beginning or end to it. It is from this infinite coil that the templates for myth and story emerge. Avatars of courage, cunning, and compassion, but also deceit, decay, and destruction. These tales are etched into our souls, yet we have forgotten them. When we were kids, though, we sensed them. We saw it in Superman or Christ, Wonder Woman or Mary. And as we grew older, these mythic memories vanish like dreams. It's my guess you are reading this, or you're listening to me read this, because a part of you longs for better Mars stories, and also a curiosity pulls you towards the moves he will be making this summer. Well, what if Mars is an aeon? What if Mars is about to step forward, coming closer to Earth than any other planet to deliver a message, a specific one, written in an ancient future language, and when translated properly, rings truer than even you? Is this a type of tale that you're looking for? So, around every 780 days, Mars goes retrograde. It is the peak moment of his synodic cycle, which begins when Mars is conjunct the Sun, the other side of the Sun. That occurred on July 26th of 2017 at 4+ degrees Leo. When Mars is opposite the Sun, also closest to the Earth, it is the midpoint of the cycle. If we were to overlay Campbell's monomyth of the hero's journey over the top of it, this would be the facing of the dragon, the ordeal, a death and a rebirth, a crisis, the encounter with the Father. It's the rarest of retrogrades and also the longest of all the personal planets, Mercury and Venus included. General themes, which seem to ooze from these close encounters like lava from Kilauea, are run-ins with enemies, that is, unfinished business to be resolved, navigating attacks, conflict resolution, alchemizing frustration into problems solved, and distilling anger into productive projects. It is strength training, a recovery of the hero-heroine stories from our youth, finding a new aeon, perhaps constructed by Mars himself, or Vulcan, or is it Cain, or is it Abel? Finding out what true power really is, a willingness to change. And these are all just a few potential manifestations around the bend, but of course, it all depends. There are no promises here, unless you have the courage to pull back your pointy finger and go spelunkering instead into your own shadowy universe. You will remain prickly. Unless you have the cunningness and wit to trick the villain of your life by inoculating them with love, you will remain spiteful. And unless you have the compassion to understand everyone is exactly where they need to be, regardless of what they have done to you, you have lost contact with the aeon. As Ram Dass says, we are all walking each other home. Let's just hope we are holding hands and hugging by the end of it. So some technical details here. Mars stations retrograde on June 25th, 4+ degrees Aquarius. He will oppose the Sun during this retrograde, also with the lunar eclipse on July 27th, 4+ degrees Aquarius. And then station direct, August 29th at 28 plus degrees Capricorn. Now we're in the pre-shadow period, and the post-shadow period will extend deep into the fall. But it's important to know where these degrees are, 28 Cap to 9 Aquarius in your chart, because then you'll be able to, work with all of this information. And so, moving on, taking a gander perhaps at the Sabian symbols for these stations. And when we do so, a timely message appears. So when you round up for the stationary retrograde degree, 9 plus Aquarius, you get 10. The symbol, a popularity that proves ephemeral. For 29 Capricorn, rounding up, a woman reading tea leaves. So the message I see in these symbols is one that has been worrying me for some time. It's the dangerous brew concocted by certain zeitgeist streams, viral memes, fake news, and our own echo chambers. All terms I'm sure you are quite familiar with. Now, sure, fads come and go, yet with the popularity of the Lobster King, the Red King, and insert your sign of a king here, it's not hard to see the demons they summon from all sides and directions. What is popular today will not be in 10 years' time. Yet, it is still essential to have a beginner's mind with all of it. We must be careful with movements and groups and ideological thinking. It's all just commentary in a sense on the aeon, not the real thing. Again, it is a gift from Mars to have the strength to think and act from your own truth until we at some point stumble out of breath into the eternal chambers of self. And that's with a capital S. And what about tea leaves? Tasseography is what it's called. I've done it. It's a form of scrying, like looking into a crystal ball or animal bones. Out of all forms of divination, I find it to be the most subjective, though. That's not to say there aren't some true oolong seers who could tell you when you finally will find the one. I've just never met one. This is also a common critique of Western astrology, one that I see often as well. You see it with astrologers who have gone rogue, renaming planets, coming up with their own strains of astrology, and telling you that other branches of astrology are false. Only theirs is the true one. These dark wizards have even probably found their way into your inbox without you even being aware of it. It could even be me. So what's the point of all of this? The Aeon, the hero, Mars, these symbols. How are we to apply this information to our own lives in the months ahead? Maybe thinking about it like this. Discernment is more precious than gold, or even Bitcoin. Without it, we become flock, or swarm, school, or murder. Individuation, motionless. So when Mars steps forward from the Aeon and becomes one himself, our swords should be ready to cut through the BuzzFeed. Our shields should be strong enough to deflect arrows aimed at our hearts. Only then will we be free of sin, because we will have found the only true aim, which is at thyself. An Aeon, a child at play, the hero of our story. So find where this battle is taking place in your chart, 28 Capricorn to 9 Aquarius. Contemplate these ideas, these symbols, and gather stories for the rest of us. We all house various types of demons, But the difference between someone who is demonic or angelic is simply discovered by what is being aimed at. Aim up, not down. Aim with truth, not lies. Aim within, not without. And you will begin to see the malevolence of Mars rise like rainbowed steam. If Aquarius pulls us into the future in some sense, it also creates prediction and anxiety. And if Capricorn pulls us into the past, in a sense, it can create resentment and depression. This is what Mars is working in the months to come. This is the battleground we are entering into. A real face-off with Kronos. stretching us in two illusory directions. So it's important to know what we are fighting for and also what we are running from. If you need help, I do offer the Mars journey as a reading. Nothing would make me happier than going on that journey with you. You can find it in my store. And so that brings us to a point where we kind of understand a good amount from Mars, the moves that he will be making this summer. But what we don't know is whether Elon is going to get there by the time that he says he is. To confirm that, unfortunately, Martians made it there before he did. And if you're not familiar with this, it's in his roadmap. That is, Elon Musk of Tesla is aiming at Mars and is, in his mind, and I'm not saying he can't do it, but I'm not interested in moving to Mars. But he is, it seems. So, not sure about that fact, but we'll see if there's any interesting, progressions around that within this Mars retrograde. The last time Mars went retrograde in Aquarius, and this is something I remember from a talk I had with Nick Dagan Best on the podcast. I think it was in 2013. And he was talking about the erratic nature of these Mars retrogrades because they're not as neat and tidy as studying, say, Venus synodic cycles. So last time Mars was retrograde in Aquarius was in 1971. And there's a lot of interesting, let's say, mundane elements that could be gleaned from it. But the one that I found really interesting and surprising, because it was, a documentary that I was watching, and it was just stated that in the summer of 1971, Be Here Now went through its first printing. And if you're not familiar with the Spirit Head Hippie Bible that Ram Dass wrote back in 1971, you should be, because it definitely, I think, gets a lot of the pistons moving, and it opens up space for angels and grace and love to enter into your life. And so I have it here in my lap. And what I'm going to do, just as a tribute to Ram Dass, to the book, and also to the last time Mars was retrograde in this area, is I'm just going to pull up a random page here and see, oh God, what we got going on. So, as you know, if you're familiar with the book, there's a lot of art, and it's kind of challenging to read from it. But I got a 2-page spread here of a naked woman. It looks like Eve, or maybe, no, it's the Divine Mother, the subtle mother, which is the whole physical plane. I'm trying to read this, I can't read it. Cosmic humor is in here. Oh yeah, that's impossible text to read. But what a beautiful mother. My goodness. And how then does Mars relate to the Divine Mother? Well, I think that, say, in the form of Hanuman, which the book is devoted to, is in service 100% to the Divine Mother. In fact, we're going to end this podcast with a Divine Mother of sorts, as you'll see here in a bit. But if you were alive in 1971, if you were alive and well and experiencing life, and as the wave had crashed and the tide was pulling back from the 60s, well, you can think back to then and study your life and see now in the present, like what to expect. I myself have been seeing all these wild examples of Aquarius rising folks going through, I think safely to say, the biggest changes in their life. And the Mars retrograde hasn't even begun. It's just, in a whole sign sense, moved into their first house. And it's going to be dancing in that space, whether it hits the ascendant directly or not. It is something also I remember Nick mentioning. It's like, when that happens, it's going to be a big year for Aquarius rising people. Well, I'm witnessing it in a pretty obvious way. And so if you have a lot of planets in Aquarius, if you are an Aquarius ascendant, then that idea applies to you. Now, there's also this information about Mars going in and out of bounds over the months to come. That's something I'm not exactly an expert at, but I am talking to Tony Howard about it really soon, and so there's going to be a conversation about out of bounds planets, and we will, of course, talk about this Mars too. Recommendations. How to move through all of this and feel centered, to feel the strength in your system as you're moving through the right kind of trouble. Well, I know how much you guys enjoy the plants and planets, and so I thought that I would include a couple plant recommendations that can be utilized during this time. For example, ashwagandha. If you're not familiar with ashwagandha, it has a mythical reputation as an herb for longevity and an elixir of life. It is said to bring you the strength of 10,000 stallions. And it's been used forever in Ayurveda, which is, of course, the holistic system of India. It's a rejuvenating herb. It's an adaptogenic herb. It helps with blood pressure, insomnia. It improves circulation. So if you got cold hands, cold feet, stuff like this, it is majorly useful. Arthritis, inflammation, basically Mars problems, like any inflammation, which is natural in the body, but when it gets out of control, it's a problem. And it's a common thing these days because of diet, because of the way we live. I mean, we live in an incredibly stressful environment. And so inflammation is usually increased in all of us, especially during pretty hot Mars times like we're moving into. And so getting some really high quality ashwagandha powder may not be a bad idea. I put it in my smoothies every day. It is good. Now, we also have the idea of the beet. The beets can and will help with Mars problems as well. It contains valuable nutrients that may help with your blood pressure, fight cancer. Also, of course, that bullseye of the whole situation, inflammation. Both these herbs or both these plants help with stamina, detoxification, and we'll just say Mars power. And it might be wise just to turn our gaze real quick to the ever-wise Tom Robbins about the beet. He says, "The beet is the most intense of vegetables. The radish, admittedly, is more feverish, but the fire of the radish is a cold fire, the fire of discontent, not of passion. Tomatoes are lusty enough, yet there runs through tomatoes an undercurrent of frivolity. Beets are deadly serious. Slavic peoples get their physical characteristics from potatoes, their smoldering inquietude from radishes, their seriousness from beets. The beet is the melancholy vegetable, the one most willing to suffer. You can't squeeze blood out of a turnip. The beet is the murderer returned to the scene of the crime. The beet is what happens when the cherry finishes with the carrot. The beet is the ancient ancestor of the autumn moon, bearded, buried, all but fossilized, the dark green sails of the grounded moon boat stitched with veins of primordial plasma. The kite string that once connected the moon to the earth, now a muddy whisker drilling desperately for rubies. The beet was Rasputin's favorite vegetable. You could see it in his eyes. So if you don't have beets in your daily life, beet juice, putting beets in your salad, cooking them up with some potatoes, whatever it is, it might be a good idea to get them in there. Because also, what I didn't mention, there's a lot of iron in beets, and iron is something that Mars rules over. So iron in the blood, anything that relates to blood issues, well, Mars. And so just a couple suggestions. Also, of course, using your energy properly. Focus, discipline, yoga helps. Working out helps. Sex that matters helps. A will to get better, not comparing yourself to others, but to yourself and who you were yesterday. A will to stay on the wagon as well. Finding heroes along the path or heroines along the path, and you emulate them. Inspirational folks. See, here's the deal. Comparisons are odious. We do not need to be comparing ourselves to any other person. All we need to be doing is comparing ourselves to who we were yesterday, last week, last month, last year, etc. Are we improving? Are we getting stronger? That is proper Mars focus. Also, competition is the killer of creativity. And so when to begin? When should we start this plan? Now, before it's too late, before this podcast is over. That's the time to begin. And so those are the ideas that I have for now. There is going to be a Mars class. I rescheduled it. It was going to be this month, but because of the retreat and everything else, I pushed it back into June. And so we're going to do it sometime right before Mars stations retrograde. And so stay tuned for that kind of trouble as well. That music in the background is from Balkinsky. It's like a Banksy play on words, a Russian down-tempo artist that I've been enjoying. That little fun music behind the Tom Robbins beat is... Actually, it comes from Aerosmith. Steven Tyler, an Aries man with a Scorpio moon, like my old landlord. And so here we go. I just want to say thank you so much for listening this far. The best way to support the show, of course, is through Patreon. It is the engine which gives the horsepower to create, the ashwagandha power to keep all these podcasts coming. And it also is a platform for many other astro calories for you as well. You just go to patreon.com/exploringastrology. And you can choose your pledge level, and that is the most amazing way of supporting this podcast. There's also iTunes, which is your podcast app that you might be listening from. And this is the easiest, the cheapest, the fastest way of supporting. And so you just scroll down on your podcast feed until you see stars and reviews, and that's how you do it. You can also do it directly in iTunes on your desktop, but who uses desktops anymore these days? So many of my friends don't even use computers anymore. They use their phone or their pad. But it's the podcast app. You scroll down, you'll see the stars and the reviews. And I thank you ahead of time because so many of you are doing so and leaving sweet reviews. Mwah! Thank you. This show is also brought to you by Solar Fire. Many of you are linking in. This is good. It means you're getting more serious about astrology. I also have a secret plan. Well, a few of us that were at the retreat have a secret plan, better said, to hopefully work with them to bring it into the modern era and add some features to it. I have no idea if they're going to comply, but the idea is there, which would be amazing. And so if you want to get some solar fire in your life, use promo code SOMA on their site and you get 15% off. If you're in the UK or if you're in Australia, you have to use a different site, so contact me about that. You still use the same promo code, but yeah, shoot me an email about that. And then also, if you purchase this, you also get access to the Solar Fire class that I did. So I just show you all the great features that I use in my practice and for research and stuff like that. And so reach out to me, exploringastrology@gmail.com, if you want access to that class. We're also brought to you on this show by 4 Sigmatic. These sweet mushroom people sent samples of many of their elixirs for my retreat. I was so happy about that, and it kept all of us focused and laughing the whole week. And yeah, so thank you to 4 Sigmatic for doing that, but also hopefully I got a bunch of people hooked at the retreat, because it is important to get these mushrooms into your system. Like talking about ashwagandha and beets, well, a lot of these mushrooms, like especially cordyceps, is a Mars type of supplement to be getting into your body every day. So use promo code SOMA and you get 10% off any of their products. Also an announcement about the CIA event, somewhere between heaven and earth. I think that's what we decided, or the marriage of heaven and earth, is this event we're doing from June 8th to June 10th at Valley Soul in Boulder. It's just outside of Boulder. And it's me, Julius Simas or Simas, that's the founder of the CIA, Shannon Jones, her partner Russell Ohalson, and Alex Trenoweth, and Lisa Savone, and even Chris Brennan's coming on Sunday for the panel discussion. And so I haven't been promoting this too much because of my retreat, but now I am, and I would love if you guys came. It's going to be a fun event for the weekend. It's a really great place. I've done an event there before, so check it out on their site, cosmicintelligenceagency.com. Also, if you go to my site, holstoheavens.com, you can sign up for classes like the 12-part chart interpretation course, the Mars journey, like I mentioned in the meat of this podcast, and also the next Maui retreat that's going to be in mid-January of 2019. So there's all of that. And then, the final piece, a lot of you are doing it, and this is good. It's perfect time for it. Crypto. So I do offer tutoring on how to get involved with cryptocurrency and also just making payments and stuff like this with cryptocurrency, because I accept it on my site now, and there is no better time to get in than right now. Trust me. Don't trust the news. Don't trust your skeptical father. Don't trust anyone that has hate around it. You should trust me about this. It's a good time to get involved. And so that's all on my website, holstoheavens.com. And so here's the deal. Gather up all your impurities, like right now, and get ready to give them to Kali. The Divine Mother shows up again, like the be here now moment. Get ready to bring all of your stuff, all of your darkness, all of your impurities that you don't want anymore, and give them to Kali. This song I'm about to share by Nick Mulvey, called Give It to Kali, is from his new EP, Dancing the Answers, and it is definitely the right kind of trouble. A lot of people have the great misunderstanding about Kali. I mean, she does look pretty wrathful, having 108 skulls around her neck and all standing on her dead husband, but it's all symbolic. And so if you want to purify during this Scorpio moon, if you want to get the most out of this Mars retrograde coming up, give your impurities to Kali. Just do it. She wants it. She's hungry for it. And so, my friends, thank you so much for listening. Long days and pleasant nights. Be well and be kind. And I will talk with you next, I do believe, with Tony about out of bounds planets. Until then, remember, fear is the mind killer. Thank you again for listening to the podcast. Sorry I wasn't able to share the song. YouTube is a bit more strict than the podcast apps. So if you'd like to listen to the whole show, go over to Spotify, the podcast app, SoundCloud, or really wherever podcasts are found. This is Tree Theater. Ciao.